We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Daled Amud Aleph and Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 44a. And the previous Amud of Chisda said that Rav said normally a Kohen is allowed to become tummy to a relative. However, that does not apply if the body of that relative, if the head is severed, because the halacha only applies when the body is whole. And the Gemara is in the middle of bringing a brisa that seems to go against Rav. The brisa continues, Yochel lo yitame l'shedro l'gulgolas l'rov binyano l'rov minyano shel acherim. I might think that a Kohen is not allowed to become tummy to the spine or the skull or the majority of the bones of other relatives. Amrit ma'achosu miyuchedesh shagufa tolibo. So we say, just like his sister is unique, that her body is dependent on him, meaning it's upon him to bury her. Umitame, and he is allowed to be mitame l'shedro l'gulgolas l'rov binyano to her spine and her skull and the majority of her bones. Avkol shagufo tolibo. So to any relative who it's incumbent upon him to take care of the burial. Mitame l'shedro l'gulgolas l'rov binyano. He's allowed to be mitame to the spine and the skull and the majority of the bones. And the point is, the brisa is saying the body does not have to be whole for the Kohen to be allowed to become tummy to it. And the Gemara answers again, same as on the previous Amud, Hahi Nami, this brisa also, Rabbi Yehuda, this brisa follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. It's a Das Yochid, V'Rav D'Amar, Ki Haitana D'Tanya. But Rav follows a different Tana. He follows the Tana of the following brisa. The brisa says, Ma'isa Shemes Aviv Shel Rabbi Yitzchak. There was an incident that the father of Rabbi Yitzchak died. Beginzik and Ginzik, Uvov, Hodiyu, La'achar Shaloshanim, and they came and they let him know after 3 years. Uva v'shalas Rabbi Yoshua ben Elisha, and he came and he asked Rabbi Yoshua ben Elisha v'dalad zakenim she'imo, and the 4 elders that were with him, v'yamru, and they said, la'aviv, it says to his father, he can become tamei bizman shu shalim. It only applies when the body is whole. V'lo bizman shu chaser. It does not apply when the body is lacking. And so again, that's the shita, that's the Tana that Rav follows. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Shlosha minin asurin benazir. There are 3 types of prohibitions by Nazir, and the 3 prohibitions are Hatuma, V'hadeglachas, V'hayotzim, and Hagefen. Number 1, a Nazir cannot become Tameh. Number 2, a Nazir is not allowed to shave. And number 3, a Nazir is prohibited from having anything that comes from the vine. Chomer betuma v'teglachas, there is a stringency by tuma and by shaving, mibiyotzim and hagefen, more than we find by things that come from the vine. Sha'atuma v'hateglachas sosrin, because let's say the Nazir becomes tameh, that undoes his count. He has to start the count of the Nazirus again. And shaving also, it doesn't totally undo the count, but when the Mishnah says sosrin, it means that you have to wait at least 30 days. You have to have at least 30 days of hair growth. So in a certain sense, teglachas also can extend the count of the Nazirus. V'hayotzim and hagefen, but that which comes from the vine, Eino Soser, meaning to say, let's say the Nazir has a product that comes from the vine, something like a grape or wine, that is not going to undo his count of the Nazirus, it doesn't extend his count of the Nazirus. Chomer biyotzim and hagefen mibetuma v'teglachas, there's a stringency if the Nazir violates and has that which comes from the vine more than we find by tum and shaving. Shayotzim and hagefen lo hutter mechlalo, because we don't find exceptions when it comes to things that come from the vine. Meaning to say, let's say you have to have grape juice or wine as a mitzvah, that's not going to be allowed for a Nazir. V'tuma v'teglachas, however, when it comes to tuma and when it comes to shaving, hutru mechlalo, there are exceptions. There are times when the Nazir is allowed to become tamei. There are times when the Nazir is allowed to shave. And the Mishnah says the exceptions are b'teglachas mitzvah v'meis mitzvah. You have an exception, for example, let's say the shaving of a mitzvah. Let's say mitzorah is supposed to shave, it's a mitzvah for the mitzorah to shave. Or you have a meis mitzvah, you have a body that has to be taken care of, it's a mitzvah to be taken care of. Those are exceptions, and the Nazir is allowed to shave in that situation. The Nazir is allowed to take care of the meis in that situation. And the Mishnah continues, v'chomer b'tumah mi b'teglachas, and there's also a stringency by tumah more than by shaving. Sha'atuma soseres, as I call, as we said, tumah undoes the entire count. The Nazir has to start the count and the term of the Nazirus over again from the beginning. V'chayovin ola carbon, and also if there's tumah, if the Nazir becomes tameh, he has to bring a carbon. V'teglachas, but let's say the Nazir shaves, eina soseres ala shloshim, it only extends 30 days, meaning you need 30 days of hair growth. V'ein chayovin ola carbon, if the Nazir shaves, there is no obligation upon the Nazir to bring a carbon. And the Gemara says, "V'tumah lo tutar michlala kal v'chomer miyayin." We should make a kal v'chomer from wine. That tumah, there should be no exceptions for tumah. And the kal v'chomer would be as follows: Umayayin sheino soser. If wine which doesn't extend the nazirus, lo hutar michlalo, there's no exceptions. Let's say by wine of a mitzvah. So tumah shasoseres, tumah which undoes, which forces the nazir to extend the nazirus. Einodin shelo tutar michlala. Certainly, it should not be mutter in situations of mitzvah. Talmud lamar lo aviv uleimo lo yitam. So the pasuk says to his father and to his mother, he cannot become tameh. and we understand that to mean lo aviv u'le'imo lo yitama. The Nazir can't become tummy to his father or his mother. Aval mitami hu lemeis mitzvah. But the pasuk is saying he is allowed to become tummy. There is an exception by a meis mitzvah. And the Gemara continues, v'yayin yuter michlalo kal v'chomer mituma. Well, wine, it should be mutter in certain cases, a kal v'chomer from tumah. Ma'atuma shisoseres if tumah, which undoes the term of his nazirus, and he has to extend his term. Hutra michlala, that's allowed in situations of mitzvah. So yayin she'eno soser, wine, which does not undo the count of the nazirus. Eno din sheyuter michlalo, certainly it should be permitted in situations of mitzvah. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, miyayin v'sheichor yazir, the pasuk says he has to separate himself from wine and sheichor, lesser yayin mitzvah ke'ayin rishus. What the pasuk is saying is, it doesn't matter if the wine is a mitzvah, it doesn't matter if the wine is a rishus, it is going to be forbidden. V'yayin yistor es hakol kal v'chomer mituma. The Gemara says, well, wine, it should undo the entire count, and that should be a kal v'chomer from tumah. Ma'atuma shehutra mechlala soseres es hakol, if tumah, which there's an exception by mitzvah, it can undo the entire count of the nazirus. Yayin shalohutra mechlala, wine, which there's no exception for, lo kol sheken sheyistor, certainly it should undo the count of the nazirus. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Vayam harishonim yiplu kitame nizro." It says the first days they fall away. He has to start over the count of the nazirus because he became impure during the nazirus. And we understand from that pasuk, tuma soseris v'yein hayayin soser. The halacha is that tuma undoes the count, but wine does not undo the count. The Gemara says that shaving should undo the entire count, and it should be a kal v'chomer from tumah. So Seres is akol if by tumah, where we don't say that the one who caused him to become tamei has the same status as the one who becomes tamei, and that undoes the entire count. So tiglachas, when it comes to shaving, she'asu ba megaleach kimiskaleach. The halacha is that the one who shaves the Nazir is treated like the Nazir himself who is shaved. Eino din shetistor sakol. Certainly by shaving it should undo the entire count. Amar Kran, the Gemara says, no, the pasuk says, Vayamim harishonim yiplu, the first days fall away, kitami nizro, because his Nazirs became impure. Tuma soseres asakol ve'intiglachas soseres asakol. Tuma undoes the whole count, but shaving does not do the entire count. And Rashi explains, Umatuma shalawasa mitame kimitame. By tuma, they don't make the person who made him tame the same as the person that became tame. Meaning, shahamitame as a nazir. Let's say somebody is mitame a nazir, ain't no over olive. There's no transgression there. Chudamukach besamach. That's going to be proven later on. But by shaving, the person who shaves the nazir is like the nazir himself. Meaning, shahamegaleach as a nazir over belav. A person who shaves the nazir actually violates a negative commandment. Kidel kamontar lo yavra al rosho kari beit lo ya'avir layacher. We understand the pasuk to mean even the person who shaves the nazir violates the lav. And the Gemara continues, v'tuma nasa ba mitame kimitame kal v'chomer mitiglachas. Why don't we say by tuma that the person who causes the nazir to become tamei should be treated like the nazir that becomes tamei, and that should be a kal v'chomer from shaving. If by shaving, which it only undoes or extends the nazirs for 30 days, we treat the one who shaves him like the nazir who was shaved. Tuma shisoseres is akol, so tuma that undoes the whole count. Eino din shenasa ba mitame kimitame. Shouldn't we say that the person who causes the tuma is treated like the nazir that becomes tame? And so the Gemara says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, v'time rosh nizro lemitame rosh nizro. It says v'time rosh nizro means to say that prohibition applies only to the nazir himself. And the Gemara says by shaving, we shouldn't say that the megaleach, the one who shaves him, should be treated like the nazir himself. Kal v'chomer mituma, we should make a kal v'chomer from tuma. U'matuma she so seres is akol, if by tuma, which undoes the whole count. Lo asu ba mitame kimitame, we don't say that the one who causes the tuma is like the nazir himself who becomes tame. Teglachas shena so seres el shloshim, so by shaving, which only undoes 30 days, shloshim yom, lo kol shekain, certainly, shalo nasa megaleach kimiskalech, we should not treat the one who shaves him like the nazir himself who is shaved. Amar Kra, so the Gemara says that the pasuk says tar lo yavor al rosho. It says in the pasuk that he can't put a razor on his head. Kari be lo yavor hu v'lo yavor la'acher. So we understand the pasuk to mean not only is it going on himself, it's going on others as well, meaning it's going on the megaleach, the one who shaves him. And the Gemara continues with tiglachas lo tutar mechlala. We should say that shaving, there's no exceptions for it. Kal v'chomer miyayin, we should make a kal v'chomer from wine. U'ma'yayin she'eno soser, if by wine which doesn't undo the count, lo hutar mechlala, there are no exceptions. So tiglachas she'soseres, shaving which undoes the count, eno din shelo tutar mechlala, certainly there should be no exceptions. Amar Achmana, the Gemara says that the pasuk says rosho, v'amar Achmana is zakano, it says his head, it says his beard. And Rashi explains, Amar Achmana rosho is zakano, the pasuk says his head and his beard, Demiasri, those are extra. Kenamrina leil, and we learned out from those earlier, lahater lemitzora nazir legaleach. We said, for example, that a nazir who's a mitzora is allowed to shave. shave. The point being that in a situation where it's a mitzvah to shave, the Nazir is allowed to shave. And the Gemara continues, V'teglachas lo tister klal kal v'chomer miyayin. We should make a kal v'chomer from wine, that shaving should not undo the count at all. O mayayin shlohuter mechlolo, if by wine where there's no exceptions, eino soser, it doesn't undo the count. Teglachas shlohuter mechlolo, by shaving where there's exceptions, eino din shelo tistor, certainly it should not undo the count. And the Gemara says to that, but inon gidol sar v'haleka. No, there's a halacha that he needs to grow out his hair. And if you don't have, if the Nazir shaved, he doesn't have 30 days of hair growth, so you don't have gidol sar. And that's why the tiglachas extends the count. V'yayin yistor shloshim yom kal v'chomer mitiglachas. The Gemara says wine should extend the nazirus by 30 days. That should be a kal v'chomer from shaving. Umat tiglachas shotra mechlolef, by shaving where there's exceptions. So seres, it extends the count of the nazirus. Yayin shalohuter mechlolo eino din sheyistor. So by wine where there's no exceptions, certainly it should extend the count. And the Gemara says to that, midu time elamisham gidol sar gabi yayin hakoyim saro. The only reason we extend the count by shaving is because we need the growth of the hair. But in a situation where the Nazir had wine, the hair is there, and there's no reason to extend. You don't have to extend for that reason. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Dalid Amud Beis.